Today we're going to be talking about AI. Now, AI seems to be this thing that's suddenly permeated everything. We're seeing it's to me, it almost seems like it's a tidal wave coming, and it's like, by golly, you better grab an oar and get in the boat and start rowing, or there's a chance you could be left behind. And so, what is CockroachDB doing with AI? What's going on that front? And to go get the answer to that, I had to go find the right person. So I want to introduce Kiki Carter to the show. Welcome, Kiki.
Hey, Greg. I am so happy to be here and super excited to talk about my new favorite subject, AI, and especially AI with Cockroach.
New favorite subject. Now, what does that mean?
Okay, I'm going to tell you what this means. New favorite subject means this is the thing that I am so into right now today. All right, so Cockroach is really my favorite subject, which is why I work at this company. I love CockroachDB. I love distributed computing, and I love the fact that we have a distributed database. That's my bread and butter. That's my heart. Um, AI is taking it to another level. This is like you said, it's a tidal wave. And you know what I'm going to say about this, Greg? I don't think that the tidal wave is coming. I think the tidal wave is here. It's like right in your face. It's coming. I love it. I love it.
I
I'm a little bit of a
I
thrill
agree with
seeker.
that. That is absolutely the case. It's like you I don't know. There's a TV show where they say get in the boat and row, and it's like, yeah, you need to start rowing now, because if you don't, it's you're going to be left behind. And so, we're eager to hear what you have brought, what you've brought to share with us today.
Yeah, okay. So before I talk about what we're sharing today, I want to take the story back a little bit. Greg, you had an episode a little while ago, didn't you, where you talked about performance tuning?
That's right. In fact, that was the first two episodes Doug and I did. We kind of dug in at first about how to do some initial performance tuning. If you go to the top of this playlist, you can find that episode. And then we did a follow up episode where we learned, even like, okay, you could speed it up a little bit doing some of this, but you can speed it up a lot more if you go and do that. So we
Mhm.
absolutely covered that.
Yeah, that was really cool because that kind of laid the groundwork for what we built next. So, in that initial episode, you talked about a lot of things that people would have to go and manually sort of discover and then work on. So it's like that entire discovery process about, okay, what's slow? Why is it slow? Let me look at my entire landscape and see what here is, what's going on here and where can I fit in and fix it. And I think you all went through a real, just methodical way of going through to discover that process, right?
Yeah, it was something Doug had spent. He had spent weeks, if not months, coming up with this process. So that's it's a
Hmm.
lot of effort. He developed a methodology. That's what he called it, a methodology
Hmm.
of, it's sort of like, here's these 5 steps, and you do these steps. You look at the outcome, and then you choose. Okay, what's the next step you take after that, and then kind of rinse and repeat. And so, it's principally to train our customers on how to go. You've got a database. It's going to be unique for you. The circumstances are going to be different for you. But if you use this mechanism, you can slowly but surely fine tune and figure out where to optimize things for your situation.
Yeah, right. And that was pretty amazing. And it was great that we had that methodology. And you can actually see that in one of the courses that we've released. If you go through the coursework, it actually teaches that methodology and teaches you how to step by step go through and do that discovery work that you need to do in order to figure out where you can optimize. So, this has been really important. And this is a really key part to what came next. And as we laid that process out, the fact that it was laid out so clearly and a I guess, a workflow that was very clearly defined, it lended itself to something that AI could do for us. Now, I don't want to skip too far ahead because I want to talk about the way that we did it in the mm, somewhat manual way. Not too manual, but somewhat. So, like I said, we come in here and we've like, all right, what's our landscape? What's going on? How do we optimize this? And we know that there are things that we can look at when we're optimizing. We can look at our cluster size. Like, do we have a large enough cluster? We can look at our replication factor. How are our replicas distributed? Where is our data? We can look at things like locality, whether our data is pinned to a certain locality that's closer to the users, things like that. We can also look at queries, and that's like Greg's expertise. He's like, I know queries and I know how we can optimize queries. And that's something that you want to look at. What do our queries look like? How are we optimizing those? There are other things that you can look at, and we have this list of things that you want to look at. And what we do is we look at this as context to our problem. So imagine, right, Greg, we have this problem, and this problem is our database is not performing the way we want it to perform. And in order for us to troubleshoot and figure out how we're going to get into this problem, we dive deep into the context around the problem as we're problem solving, right?
Yeah, yeah. The you said context. Now
Yes.
that sounds like a very AI flavored word.
It is. It is such a key word in the AI world, and it's so important, and it's something that I feel like, we learned a lot about when we were in grade school, elementary. Like, how do I know this new word that I've come into? Or even when you're learning a new language, you're like, oh, I discover about this word. Like, I can understand this word when I see it in a certain context. And I can understand different meanings when I see it in a certain context. In that same way that humans can understand things in context, the way we need context in order to figure out what's going on, AI is the same way. So, AI having access to context is what allows it to make certain discoveries that humans make. Okay, so let me take a step back again and not oversell AI. It is not a person. Right? It's not a person. It's not actually thinking. It says things like, "I'm thinking," and it kind of mimics a person thinking, and you may think that, "Oh my goodness, this thing is thinking for me." It's not.
It's not. It's crunching a lot of numbers. Maybe it has ones and zeros. Maybe we have a different type of ones and zeros, but it's
Yeah.
still, it's crunching, it's not thinking, and it's almost like whatever it is doing and whatever we're doing, it doesn't matter. It's
Mhm.
let's just understand what it is doing and let's
Yeah.
apply it to the best to serve our needs and do what we need it to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it is doing something that we do when we see context and we use context clues. We take a guess at the answer, at what this word might mean, this new word I've seen, what this word might mean in a different language if I know a few words around it. We take a guess at what it means and at what to say in response or how to respond to that or how to use it ourselves. And that's a lot of what AI does. Um, I'm just kind of boiling it down into really a simplistic term, but it's making a prediction. It's guessing
Hmm.
about what comes next. And instead of like maybe this whole word comes next, it's guessing on a token coming next. And in order to make those guesses, it needs to have a certain amount of context. And in the context of CockroachDB and talking about queries and speeding up queries, it needs to have context about what's going on in the system. So what we wanted to do was build something out. This was a POC that we built. We're like, hey, what if we could programmatically provide context to AI so that it could do some of the things that we were manually doing. So we're going to figure out what's going on in the console, what's going on with our replicas, and we have something called DB console where we can go in and look at it. So I want to take a minute and share the screen. Is it okay if I go ahead and share a
Yeah,
couple of
let's
things?
give us the goodies.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who can't help but to share like some code and stuff, even at the risk of the demo gods misbehaving on me.
All right, let's put it up here for you. All right.
All right, so let's take a look at this. Um, this is Cockroach DB console, and this is how you can get sort of this overall look into what's going on in your cluster. And I have a cluster that's in the cloud now. It's a self-hosted cluster. It's one that I've started up, and it has 5 nodes, a number of replicas. It's running a load now. So I have a load test that's running on it that's supposed to be simulating a production load of this bookstore application that Greg and some of our other team members have cooked up. So we have this view into our nodes, and we have different metrics that we can look at. I see that I have 5 nodes here. I can see other metrics going on. I see I have a number of queries per second. I can look at my SQL activity and I can see things like I can arrange it by things like statement time so that I can see are there some slow queries? And these are the things that I might do if I'm looking to find something that's slow. I'm like, oh, what's going on here? I could check out the
And
database.
so
Yeah, go
And so
ahead.
for those that may have seen, if you go back and watch the first couple episodes of Select Star, Doug and I dove in to the same console essentially and looked
Hmm.
at some of these things. So Kiki's kind of skimming over it to catch
Yeah.
us up here. But this is the kind of thing you can actually go spend hours digging in to find out. Here's a sub-second query. I don't care about that one. Here's a query that's taken 15 seconds. I care about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are other metrics you can look at. Maybe this one only takes, 500 milliseconds, which could be pretty long, but it runs for 70% of the time. And you're like, okay, if I could shave a
Wow.
couple milliseconds off of that, then that can help out my database a
Hmm.
lot, right? So this is the kind of context that we have and where you might go. Now, there are other tools people use for troubleshooting, but all of the information that you see here and all the information that you may find in other tools comes from something called our Cockroach DB API and our Cockroach metrics that we now report into Datadog and it's you know certain things that you can get insights into. So we're looking at all of this and we're thinking, how can we get this into AI in a way where if I give AI all of this context, can the tool tell me what's going on in my system and what might I be able to do about it? Right. And that was sort of our goal. We're like, okay, right now we're telling people to go here and click this button and do this drop down and check here. And you'll see that in the previous episodes. But could I get AI those same metrics and have it draw some conclusions from the context that we've given it? And so we built this experiment to see how we could do that. Now I'm gonna switch over. Like I said, I have something running now, and it's running only around 1,600 queries per second. We could ramp that thing up and
Only.
run a lot more. Yeah, we could ramp that thing up. It doesn't matter. We can start these processes in the background all day. Um, but what I want to do is switch over to this thing we call our report generator, and I want to see if I could get an AI tool to generate these recommendations and tell me things about my cluster. And so as I was building this tool, I thought, all right, here are some things that are going to be important to me if I'm looking at this tool and if I want to know like, okay, is the tool telling me true things or is this thing hallucinating? Because Greg, what in the hallucinations, right?
Yeah, there's this new vocab out there, and I'm sitting there every time I read somebody's post on social media. I'm sitting there trying to figure out, is this market spiel or is this something I need to learn? And some
Yeah.
of it's vital. Those hallucinations are, I don't know, well named. I'll call that, because some things that AI tells me are like, that's ludicrous, and other things are like, well, that's almost correct.
Yeah.
But other things are like, how did you figure that out when I barely gave you any context at all? So this is the game we're playing with AI and this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, I want you to tell me some stuff, but I want to know that you're actually looking at the data that I'm giving you to make these conclusions. So, first thing, I want you to tell me what you've observed about my system. And it looks like it's pretty good. It's like, all right, there's a CockroachDB cluster. You've got 5 nodes. It's giving me the node IDs, and it's also telling me something interesting that I have an unknown locality. All right, so far, so good. AI, you're telling the truth. You're not hallucinating yet. I've got a database here. It's got a table and it's telling me all the columns. All right, again, you're doing good. You're not hallucinating. You're doing good. You've got some zone configurations and you're telling me the CPU usage. All right, So this is the first step. This is really good. And you might be like, okay, that's not exciting. I'll tell you why this is exciting. This is exciting because I fed this thing some information and I said, let me make sure that you're drawing conclusions and you're actually looking at what I'm telling you, because I'm telling you right now, if you don't provide real context, this thing will just make up any old thing. It will. All right. So now I want to know, okay, now that you've looked at this, what are the things that you see and why does it matter? All right. I can see here that you need some locality settings. And you probably need to look at your resources. And it's going to give you some more details later on, but it's like, all right, your CPU usage is kind of low. So look, it actually gives you some action items here. And this is something that people may not actually know yet. You may have started up your cluster, you started up all the nodes on some servers, and you did a start script without including locality. I'm not going to go all the way into locality here because we've probably done it on, on other episodes, and I know we have it really in depth in university if you go into Cockroach University. But locality is super important to the performance of your queries and of your database. So it says, all right, I need you to review and update the node localities, and that's important because without locality, you don't get the best distribution of your replicas, right? And you're not able to take advantage of things like multi-region databases if you don't have locality. So that's an important action item that it's listed here. Then it's got another action item. Look at your CPU utilization. That utilization is pretty low. So you definitely want to look at that. And it gives you some expected improvements. What's going to happen? And it's throwing these numbers out here now. I can't promise that these numbers are not, that they're not hallucinating somewhat. I don't know about that. I haven't tested all of these, but these are things that you could actually test to figure out the efficacy of your system. So you're like, all right, are my tools doing right? If it gives you something, can you quantifiably test it? And that's something that you can test. And that's something I'll talk about later when we talk about, okay, let's test whether or not these things are working well. All right. So far, so good. We've got some information here and we can talk about bottlenecks. Now, next, we've got something around schema and index optimizations. And it's funny because as you look at all of these sections, you'll see that these sort of mirror everything that we talk about in our course, in our developer course and our optimization course, right, Greg?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's the silver bullet that's been around forever. Whenever you start talking about my database is slow or my query's slow, somebody just shouts from the rooftops, create an index, which it's both true and not true in the vein of
Yeah.
yes, creating the right index
Right.
absolutely is vital to query optimization, and creating the wrong index can hamper it. So it's like
Yeah.
it's true you need to make indexes, and we spend hours, sometimes days of effort creating the right index or something. And here
Mhm.
we've got something thrown at us that was generated in seconds, telling us here's what to, it looks like. Here's what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is telling us, look, I see this query here. That's an update that is super slow. It's 9 seconds is the mean latency. Like, what? Who's gonna? And okay, somebody's looking at this like, oh, I would never write a query that slow. I would never do this. I would never do that. And I can't tell you how many times I've looked at someone who's using an ORM or something like that, and you use the default ORM settings, and you will underlying see a query like this. You don't
Yep.
know, right? Um, and it's telling you like, oh, look, we got a real inefficient lookup on the author column and gives you a real plain index recommendation. All right. And then it tells you why. I love this because it actually is giving you some action items, but it's also telling you why it matters. And that's great for people who are learning. Imagine you've got
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So don't just blindly throw out recommendations, but instead, here, this is a recommendation, and here's why it's to your benefit. And so the next time you may start thinking ahead,
Yeah.
and it helps get you the right nomenclature.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then you've got this expected improvement. Now look at this one. We're looking at this going from 9 seconds to under 100 milliseconds.
Whoa.
Yeah. So imagine somebody looking at that and they're like, okay, that's a pretty big deal. I can't believe I missed that. Or, you know, 9 seconds to under 100 milliseconds, at least you're going to try it. Whether or not you agree with those numbers or think like I can't get it that to improve that much, you're going to try. You're going to say like, okay, let me give this a try.
Yeah.
You're like,
For sure. If it's because it's okay, I'll try it out. It's like we'll do that. We'll see if it improves it. If not, we can throw the index away. So it's like it's worth a
exactly.
shot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely worth a shot. And then we've got another one, right? We've got this thing where it's telling us that I have a full table scan. And this is again, this
Eesh.
goes back to your point, Greg, about teaching about nomenclature and teaching about different words that people may not have encountered or different concepts they haven't encountered. Because believe it or not, there are still some people who are new to code and new to databases and who may or may not encounter this stuff on a day to day basis. And this brings me to another point. Not going to rant. Okay, I'm going to rant a little bit, but
We'll allow it this time.
please. So think about like, I don't know. I remember when things were a little more siloed when it came to development. And I don't think that's a great thing because silos were not always amazing. But you'd have someone who worked on the database, and that was the database person or the database team.
Hmm.
And then you'd have like your backend engineers, and those were like your backend team, your Java developers. And then you had front end and all of that. Okay, now everything is full stack. It's like
Yeah.
you got to be a developer who does everything now. You're like, I need to do the front end, the back end. I need to be a database developer. I need to be I need to make mobile apps. I need to know CI/CD. I got to do Kubernetes. Like you got to do it all. At least
I
I
remember
did.
one of my one of my most educational moments I felt that was such a long time ago was we were building this Ops Center application, but somebody from the DB database management team had been assigned to the software team. So we had a DBA helping us write select statements, and this person showed me how to do an explain plan after I'd been
Mhm.
working for 2 years on the contract, and I was like, why didn't you show me this on day one?
Right.
And so that kind of working with experts to that cross education was a benefit. And then on the flip
Yeah.
side, another business app was developed by somebody who had a strong DBA background, and he rolled off the contract, and I inherited his app and discovered that he had had problems and talked to nobody. He stayed siloed, and I found views joining views. I found the same table getting
Oh.
joined 20 times, and so I found out that somebody would click the save button and it would take 20 minutes to run, and so the back office people would go take a coffee break. So I spent I spent weeks pulling this query apart to figure out what does it even do. It had no automated testing. So I
Wow.
finally figured out what it did, rewrote the query, and it went sub-second. And the people in the back office, they hit save and went and took their coffee break, unaware that the save had already finished.
You're like,
So
you're like, welcome to the new world
it's
where
like,
things work.
what?
I
So
know.
but I've enjoyed at Cockroach Labs. It's a very kind of a cross-pollinating environment. We all have different roles, but there's a whole lot of like reach across the aisle. Let's work with this person. Let's work
Yeah.
with that person, and that goes to your point of let's de-silo stuff.
Hmm.
Let's interoperate, and we can probably do a lot better if we did that.
Yeah. I mean, we're removing the silos but as we're removing these silos, we're exposing people in a very deep way to things that they may not know. So instead of being a DBA, you're a Java developer who knows just enough about the database to be dangerous. And so we remove
That's
that
accurate. That's
silo.
accurate.
Yeah, man, we remove those silos, but we've also now created some new liabilities.
Let's just hand them hibernate, though. It could go wrong. Oh, you
Yeah,
need to
I
edit
mean,
that
look,
out.
let's just hand them hibernate. Let's do it. Let's do an ORM, and everything's fine. We'll just use
I,
objects and make object queries. And as soon as find my object, like I'll do find object, everything's fine, right?
I jest, but I mean, there's a hibernate advocate out there, and probably about once a month, he blogs about the destructive pattern of I'm going to use the ORM and I'm going to do the find all, and then I'll filter it in my app. And it's like, oh,
Man, you
cringe.
don't
I don't
know.
have a cringe. I don't have a cringe sound effect to hit the
Yeah,
button
we
for
need the
it.
cringe sound effect because I have seen that a lot.
No,
And
it's
it's
whatever context you have for whatever your operation, update, select, whatever. You want to take as much context, information, criteria, and push it into the database and let the database have the maximum amount of information to process that.
yeah, absolutely. You want this tool that does the best job at that thing to do its thing before it gets
Yeah.
to you, right? I want the database does its thing well. Let's let it do its thing and then give me a result that I can then work well with.
And if your tool is able to go talk to the database, analyze what's happening through published APIs and come up with this, string of recommendations, then I mean, gosh, what's the worst that's going to happen? Okay, this recommendation, I tried it out, it didn't work, so I'm going to throw it out. But the other three boosted the thing by 80%. What's sounds like a recipe for success to me.
I mean, it sounds like a win, but wait until we go into the next phase of this when I talk about that. But this is what we have now, right? This is something that is not future looking. This is stuff that is now. And the benefit of this is not only for people who are looking to optimize their applications as developers, but like DBAs or people who don't know much about the database or people who are, look, we've got new tools out where you're like, oh, develop anything. You don't need to be a developer. You don't need to have any code. You can do this, you can do that. And you're like, all right, let me go do that. And then the thing's not giving you the performance you need, right? And so how are you going to figure that out? How are you going to see what's going on here? And so we've got this tool that, like I said, this is built as a PLC, but we were able to prove out the process of providing this context to our AI tool and then getting some real good information around, all right, here's some things that I could do. And you can imagine a use cases, right? And imagine you have a customer that's having some problems and you say, let me just run a report real quick and see what's going on. And let me see if I can look at just step by step. All right, what are all the things that I could do here? All right, I could create this index. Okay, I could run this explain plan. I could modify these full table scans. I can use locality. Um, these are different things that I can do. These are like actionable things. This isn't just some fluff stuff. This is pretty actionable. You can take it back and you can rerun this and you can get a new report and you can see like, okay, what's going on. Um, but let's talk about AI and let's talk about how AI works, right? So um, it's not perfect, this thing, but we have built it in a way, our PLC at least, we've built it in a way where we're using certain tools. Right now, we're using OpenAI API, and we're using functions, building them up with function tools. And we're making sure that the responses that we get back are structured responses. And that's how we're able to build really GPT or whatever else is out there. You use those tools and you say something to it and it gives you back this blurb. And sometimes it uses cell blocks or sometimes or something like that. But we wanted this to be something that is a tool where I could display it the same way, the same the same format, and I could create this little web page out of it. And in order to do that, I needed to get a structured response from it. But what's going to happen if I run this again? Now, again, this is the real interesting thing with AI. If I run this again, it is probably not going to tell me the same thing in the same words. And another thing is it may pick up something in some runs that it doesn't pick up in another run. So even if it picks it up, like, okay, it picked up locality last time, but sometimes it may give you a little more detail around why locality is important. It may actually mention a multi-region database. So that is one of the, I guess, I don't know if it's a limitation, but this is a way that this AI tool works, where it will give you
Okay.
that information. It will break it down for you, but sometimes it guesses on it makes a guess about what's important here. And sometimes those guesses are not always the same across different runs.
Well, tell me, see if I've got this right. If my understanding is its ability to kind of have that amount of variance is what's often referred to as temperature. So
Yeah.
you can tell it, I want you to kind of strike out and look for something new, to this amount. And the trade-off is it may go find this other attribute, or aspect, but it
Yeah.
may drop this other thing it had last time. So you're
Yeah.
trading, mutability or new ability to discover at the expense of repeatability in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, this is true. And when you're making a tool that other people need to consume or that people want to use, you want to make sure that you're getting some level of consistency in the responses. So even if the wording is not always the same, you may not have noticed this, but the last time I ran this, it gave node IDs, but it used a different way of writing it. It wrote node underscore ID lowercase, and then it gave
Uh,
all the node IDs. But this time it wrote it in a different way. Well, I mean, it still
right.
gave you the same data that, all right, the cluster has 5 nodes and their IDs are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they have unknown locality, but the wording was a little bit different. And then what it said about the least preferences, it's a little bit different. So the wording is a little bit different, but the message here, I think it's, I think the message here is consistent. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is to me. It's like it's saying, go, okay, here's, you got 5 nodes. That's still true. It's telling me the node IDs, which this is something I only recently learned about. It's what I call the node and what it's represented internally may not be the same thing. So it's got to,
Yeah.
basically, that's a primary key. And then, oh, locality, go, you need to set locality. And I put out a comment. So if you think we need to cover a future episode and go talk about what the heck is locality, why does it matter for CockroachDB, smash the like button. So, we definitely need to target locality. Now, just because it says
Yeah.
it in a different way doesn't mean that it's incorrect.
Yeah. Right. So it's pretty much on message. It's still finding the same things like, all right, I see this. It added something about the primary key index coverage. It's telling me about the full table scan, and then it's telling me a list of everything. So it is fairly consistent, but um, this is something that you have to be cognizant of when you're using AI and using certain models. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to go a little more technical on this and talk about the models and what we're using here. So, and actually, I can't help myself. So I'm going to open up the code.
Code. Okay.
I know I really shouldn't do this, but I am
Oh,
because,
come on. This is the developers. Like everybody loves to look at some code. Why
all right.
don't before you go too deep on the code, why don't you just
Yeah.
tell us like what stack are we looking at, or what are you using to build your
Yeah.
app with here?
Yeah. I'll tell you about this stack. So this is a pretty basic node application. I am using like nothing major here. This is like a very vanilla Node JavaScript application. It's not anything crazy at all. Okay. Um, and in order to create this app, I'm going to just show you. So we've got an Express server, blah. This is nothing, no, nothing revolutionary. And we're using this Node JavaScript stack along with OpenAI API. And the really interesting thing is we're using a specific model which is called the O3 Mini model. I'm gonna increase this a little bit so that people can see. So this
Okay.
is an O3 Mini model. And I'm using a high reasoning effort. So you can talk about, okay, how much reasoning do I want to use? I'm using high reasoning here. Let me take a pause here. I built this app a while ago, actually. I built this out as a POC some months ago. I don't know, maybe it was in December or something like that. And back when I built it, there was a different model out. This model wasn't out. And also, it was not using tools at that time. Tools became deprecated somewhere around the time when I was using this. Actually, functions became deprecated and we moved to tools, which is still a way of calling functions, but they call it tools now. So I built this app and I built it using the 4.0 model originally. I think originally it was using 4. Actually, okay, I built this a while ago because I actually was using 3.5 model. And the answers were so different.
Wow.
The answers were so different. Like what you see on the output was so different. It was so basic. It was wrong a lot. It actually hallucinated a lot back then when I
Wow.
first built it. It was not super useful. It was a little bit useful, but it was not super useful when I first built this. Fast forward to today, where I've swapped out into, and I've gone through a number. I moved from 3.5 to 4.0, and then I did the O1 model, which was actually a lot better. It was like pretty incredible. Once I moved to O1 from 4.0, I was like, wow, these answers are getting pretty good, you know? And then I moved to the O3 Mini with high reasoning, and man, that thing was it just kept blowing me away. I say that to say, you can build stuff today for the models that you have today and still benefit from what they have, but build it in the way that if you could just swap out the model, this is not even a whole line change. Like, okay, when I changed, when the functions got deprecated, I did have to make a few more changes. But between O1 and O3, it was literally like I didn't even change an entire line.
Wow.
I just swapped the model out and my app was better. It's like I just changed the model, the underlying AI model I was using, and my product, we call it a product. My product improved.
So in the span of three to 5 months or something like that, you were able to observe firsthand an epic change in quality, an improvement
Yeah.
in quality.
Huge improvement in quality and an improvement that, my product improved just because the model improved. And I didn't have to do anything with my product in order except for to change out the model to reap the benefits of it. And I think that says something about
Wow.
like yeah, about integrating AI into your products. Because if you build a product and you're integrating AI into it and people can tap into those models as part of your product, then your product is going to get those um, not just incremental improvements, but very good improvements when it comes to, all right, I switched out the model and now I got some awesome stuff going on.
Impressive.
So, so this is what we're doing here. And like I said, this is an old PLC. I wrote it a long time ago. I would probably do some things a little bit differently now when it comes to the way that I'm structuring now, but I do have a structured output. I might use, I was actually thinking about, Greg, you'll love this. I'm thinking about writing some tools using the Spring AI tools. Spring AI tools,
Ooh.
they're really good. They're really good. I've been messing around with those. And that kind of leads me to the next part of what I want to talk about here in the evolution of this thing. So let me actually go back. Again, I want to actually first, I want to show you these are the tools that I'm using. And this tool name is Generate Recommendations. And I have this object which tells me, it tells the model how to respond and how to format this structured response so that it comes back in this way. And that giving a structured response is really, really important when you're building a tool that you need to have a repeatable process around.
Okay, so this is a format or this is a first of all, this is a JSON structure, and it's
Yeah.
one that you've defined that you're able to take to the model and say, here's the output structure I want you to fit your answer into.
Yes, exactly. And
That's one of those incredible powers that I've observed with the AI tools is not just go out and find the answer, but
mhm,
get the answer from three different places, kind of mash the data together. I remember when we built mashable websites in the past,
yeah,
mash it together and now, spin it into this format that I've got. Where else have we
yeah.
been able to do that kind of combination work before?
And it's even nicer that now, like that one is in JSON, but you can write code, even in Java where you define an object and that becomes your structure. You're like, hey,
Oh,
respond in this object. And how amazing is that for like OM developers who like to speak an object, right?
yeah. So you can fit it, you can talk with the AI tools and put it into your lingo. So, you're able to use Node.js, but the person to your left can use Python and the person to your right can, I don't know, use C++ if they're a glutton for punishment. But
Right. And I'll talk a little bit more about the code. I didn't plan on doing a code walkthrough, but I just want to show this so that people can see that this is not super crazy to implement, but it is something that you can absolutely do. This is where I gather the cluster data. And right now, I'm reaching out to these Cockroach APIs. So CockroachDB has an API that's built into it where you can talk to. And I have this as a secure cluster, so I have to use certs, but you could try this out on a non-secure cluster. And I'm going to talk about how you can try to remind me later, Greg, to tell people
yes.
about my
By the way, this
new
is your this is
endeavor.
your full disclosure statement. Never put a cluster into production without being secured.
Yeah, no,
Proceed.
please don't do that.
It's almost
um,
become a mantra. We have to say it about every episode because we'll be on a demo version of a cluster and say, "Do not release unsecured."
right.
Okay.
And this is a demo, and I secured it because why not? Um, so I grabbed the cluster topology using these endpoints. I get information about the database, about the schema. I grab information about the CPU usage. I'm targeting some slow statements like, okay, find me the all the slowest statements in the last hour. This could be anything, but again, this was a POC. And I take all of this information, and this is the context that I provide. This is the context that I provide here. Here's my cluster,
Oh,
and here is the cluster information. And this is the prompt
this is the
that I use.
prompt.
This is the secret sauce, right? This is our prompt. And I have prompted it to use a structured
That's the thing.
JSON
That's the
and call the
I
two.
don't know, I have this joke phrase somewhere where it's oh, my daughter tells me you're a software engineer, and the guy's actually I'm a prompt engineer, and that's supposed to be diminutive, and the guy says you have 10 seconds to get out of my house. I just always laugh at it, but I mean, in truth, we are writing prompts, and it's really all we're doing is, like you said at the beginning of your presentation, is we're we're pulling together context. We're trying to hand this. Okay, here's what I need you to do, and this is all the context I'm providing you. Let me put it in the structure. Why not put it inside an app?
Yeah. Now we're providing the context this time. I wanted you to remind me, let's talk about how you can get this context into the AI, into your AI tool without
I
you
don't know if I'm
manually
hearing.
providing.
Is your mic muted, or I don't know if Felipe can hear.
Oh, can you hear me? You can hear me, Felipe?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So, when it comes to providing context, instead of us providing the context, a person providing this context manually, what you want to do is be able to have tools that can provide the context and be able to programmatically share context with your tools that your AI clients can call on in order to do the work that you needed to do. And for that, we have something called Model Context Protocol. And Model Context Protocol was something that's developed by the Anthropic team. It is brilliant. It's something that you're able to use in order to build this infrastructure that you need in order to actually have a real AI native architecture. And that infrastructure, what it does is it allows you to share context with your model. So when I said, okay, how could I test this more easily with CockroachDB? Well, what we can do and what I'm building now is a CockroachDB MCP server, which will then expose a number of tools that tap into the API that you can actually share this server with your client, and then your client has that CockroachDB context automatically there. It's amazing. It's brilliant. And there are a number of servers that have already been built to integrate with tons and tons and tons of other tools. And this is something that, again, I'm always coding, I'm always working on something else. And I'm looking at this now, and thing has been great for building out really sleek agentic workflows. Now, I'm throwing out a lot of words and a lot of terminology right here, but I want you to get the real takeaway here is one, if you want AI to work really well for you, you have to provide it the right context. You then have to provide the right prompts. And then you have to have something that is repeatable and something you can evaluate. And how does this work with CockroachDB and speeding up your queries? Because that's really what we want to talk about. Because right now, you can see we have a tool where you can get these recommendations. And this is something we're like, all right, great. I can speed up Cockroach right now if I go and take these steps. But what if instead of you taking these steps, not on production, but you're running this on some staging environment and you allow an agent to go ahead and take those steps. And then you say, like, oh, yeah, that looks good. And the agent reports back to you, like, hey, I discovered this when I looked at it, and I did these steps, and this is what the new report looks like. Are you okay with executing that in production or on a different environment? I mean, the possibilities are pretty spectacular there, I think. I don't know. What do you think?
I've built my share. My one of my old taglines was test bit and script junkie. So I early on learned how to like build Perl scripts or Python scripts, and very often I'm going to go grep log files. I'm going to look for this or look for that in the system. And I one time built a script that every 10 minutes would on a cron job would wake up and go analyze the system, and if it spotted something down or whatever, to go stop and start a server. Try to do some amount of maintenance. And I had to pull some really fancy tricks out of a hat to get it to do some, I don't know, what I call basic stuff. When I look at this, it's like it's almost halfway to effortless, the level of effort it takes you to write that. And
Yeah.
then what it's able to go do is like, multiples of that in the payoffs. And so,
hmm
you know,
Yeah, it's
there,
such a low cost, like you said, that's a really good way. It's such a low cost way to experiment and get some real valuable insights and get some real valuable actionable things, and then actually be able to test performing those actions using agents. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to build this type of stuff.
we had built an app when I worked at Harris Corporation. We were managing a 24/7 ops center, and we had, critical air, traffic with air, we sold circuits to air traffic control operators talking to airplanes and stuff.
hmm
So we had outages. We had to alert the right people quickly in the right areas. And so we built a tool that would integrate with text messaging. So they type a message, it would figure out the person's phone number and send them a text message. And so I'm just thinking like, well, gee, now I need an agent that's sitting there monitoring my cluster. It's spotting well, it's been humming along fine, but something has just gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
Text the program manager or whatever and alert them, because the context may be the program manager may know, oh, my somebody on my team just rolled out a patch update. There may be
Yeah.
something bad in the patch. Let's roll it back and go figure out what's wrong.
Right.
And now it's like, snap your fingers to build that.
Yeah, exactly. And so this ability to provide so much, okay, you've got these amazing tools and you can swap out the models, you can swap out the tools using model context protocol. I could be using Claude Sonnet, I could be using OpenAI O3 model, I could be using any underlying model, right? And I could swap those out very easily. And I could always be able to provide context that's from my organization, my specific task, what I'm doing, and ensure that the AI is giving you very useful responses, very targeted, useful, and can actually perform workflows for you. That's the world that you're looking at going forward.
Well, and it almost feels like also, it seems like about every other day somebody's got a doom and gloom post about either AI is nothing or AI is taking away 90% of the jobs. And I think the real
Yeah.
answer is somewhere in the middle. And
Yeah.
it's like what we're really doing is, instead of me expending all this effort at, well, let me figure out how to use Jackson and deserialize a JSON output. Well, that's a very low level thing to be caught up in. It's like,
Yeah.
let's elevate the level and say, well, I need a thing that does this step for me, or it does this and it's going to feed me a result. I'm defining the requirements. I'm virtually writing them in spoken
Yeah.
language, and this tool is working with me, kind of like, we have IDEs, we have incremental compilation, we have tools that work for us, but we're still giving it the tasking. Now I can give it a higher level tasking, and it can help me achieve that too. And that sounds like a plus in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be like, you know, these days you don't tell somebody that, oh, I was writing this document and I used spell check to help me write this document. No, we just assume that spell check was used
Yeah.
when I was writing
Yeah.
this document. Like it auto corrected words for me. Now, I'm not going to talk about Apple autocorrect because it wears me out. It is like the worst. The worst. Sorry,
So,
love you, Apple. Um, but the same ubiquity in which you see stuff like spell check or grammar checks in your docs, I feel like we're going to find that same thing with AI in the tools that we're using, and it's just going to cause us to move, like you said, in different ways. Greg will be doing more higher order thinking. Instead of shuffling things along on the lower levels, we'll actually be able to take a step back and think about broader ideas, things that we could implement if we weren't cuffed at the hands by, minutia.
and I had this problem that I a problem that I invented by my own hand. It's I was sitting there trying to fix my wife's website for some reason that undergirds her publishing business, and I had FileZilla opened up with SFTP, and so I was sitting
Mm,
there trying. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to clean out this folder. Well, what I had accidentally done was connected to my website, and I had
mm.
accidentally cleaned out the folder and deleted all the files. And then once I realized it, I was like, and I thought, okay, I can reinstall the web server files, but all the uploaded images were gone. And then I thought, wait a minute, where can I find these? Well, the Wayback Machine at archive.org has them all. I wonder if I could write a Python script to go fetch all the files in the same folder
Ooh.
structure. So I went to ChatGPT, and we had a little conversation, and we started building a little Python app and after it was about 20 back and forth, we had a tool operating that had rate limiting. It was able to download stuff. It could detect redirects, and before I knew it, I was like, oh, look, it's pulling everything down. I fed it the context of, here's the Wayback Machine's official rate limiting policy that I found. And
That's
and
crazy.
suddenly I had a script that would download 1,600 files in the span of about 2 hours, with the rate limits applied. And I was like, this would have taken me 6 weeks of effort if I'd written it by hand. It
Yeah.
it couldn't do it on its own. I had to keep pushing it this way and
Yes.
that, and it
Yes.
had features I wouldn't have done by hand. Like I had little emoji things popping up for success or failed, success, and I would have given up at that point. I would have written it off and said I can't do this. But with this, I got it all.
Yeah, it's incredible the things that you can do. Like you recovered something that was probably, not super recoverable, not by a human hand, right? Not quickly. Imagine how this works. So look, I
We
see
got a
this
question here,
cover.
and
Yeah.
I don't know how much. I don't know if you happen to have the answer to this. It's okay if you don't. But Darker Knight, thanks for tuning into the show today. Does Cockroach have any AI native tools?
Yeah, so I can't really speak on like what we're building in the product right now on a product type, but I will say stay tuned. AI native tools are, absolutely on the way. Just stay tuned, like
Yep,
very
stay
soon. Like,
tuned.
stay tuned. I can't talk
That's
about that right now,
that's the
but
official notice.
official notice. But yeah, this is an incredible time to use these tools, to use Cockroach, and a lot of other tools, databases, and things, because right now integrating AI and making it native as part of your product is just taking things to another level.
And here's your other official notice: is you need to subscribe and ring the bell to the channel. That way you don't miss our upcoming episodes. We've launched the show with Select Star, and Felipe and I have taken a tour de force of going through a lot of Spring tools and stuff. And I want to let you know this is not a Spring Central show. This is a CockroachDB centric show. So we're curating more content. Felipe's already been beating my door down saying, "Can we talk about this? Can we talk about that?" And I'm like, bring it.
Yeah.
What's the guy from Emperor's New Groove just goes, bring it. So we've got all kinds of stuff coming, and we want you to subscribe so you can catch it all, because we want you to be able to learn everything you can about CockroachDB, because I mean it is wicked.
Indeed.
By the way, today's episode of Select Start is brought to you by Cockroach University. Now, someday I need to wear my little Cockroach University t-shirt that's got the nice emeritus logo with the university thing. But if you either click on the QR code, or if you're listening in on the audio version, go to university.cockroachlabs.com, and you can actually get your hands on a real CockroachDB instance in some of our workshops, and it is totally, absolutely free. We've also expanded the show now. If you go to places like Apple Podcasts or Amazon Music or iHeartRadio and some other places, you can search for Select Star Show and you can catch it on the audio version. And if you enjoyed Kiki coming on the show, I invite you to smash the like button and write into the comments, "Hey, Kiki, you need to come back and show us some more of this stuff like 3 months from now," because we want to see how the tools have evolved. We would be eager to see that.
Yeah. Would love to show you the new stuff I'm working on.
Oh, that's great. All right. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in for today's episode, and we will see you next time.
This episode is over, but your learning has just begun. Visit CockroachLabs.com to find all kinds of content to expand your knowledge.